This is the new Wacom Cintiq Pro 27. It is big and it comes with all the bells and whistles that Wacom could throw at. So here's what we're gonna be doing. I pick an art project from your comments, and we use that art project to test out this pen display. Here we go, big money, no whammies. Use a 3D model as your starting point. Okay, I'm totally down with this one. So to save some time, and because I'm lazy, I'm gonna be using a castle model that I made for a video about a month ago. I can just take all the pieces, parts, and rearrange them and duplicate a lot of stuff and see what I come up with. The Cintiq Pro 27 is Wacom's flagship pen display. Everything that they can think of to put into this thing, they have. The screen is big, 26.9 inches, with a 4K resolution of 3,840 pixels by 2,160 pixels, and 120 hertz refresh rate. This thing has a really wide color gamut and a touchscreen, and this fabric is probably, I don't know, a cape? Now, when I shared the details of the Cintiq on Twitter when Wacom announced it, a vast majority of the comments were about the price. And yeah, this thing is crazy expensive. $3,500 for the unit, and then another $500 just for the stand. And for most people, I get it. It's not a great value, but personally, I'm glad it exists. There are people out there who really want a Pantone skin tone validated display. There are people out there who really want HDR gamma support. There are people out there who really want 98% DCI P3. And if you don't know what any of those things are, that's okay. This just means that you don't need them. And I feel you. I'm one of those people, but I'm glad someone is making pen displays for the people who do. I'm glad someone is making pen displays that are pushing the boundaries. And there's no reason to really get upset about the price of these things because there's so many options out there that are a lot cheaper. So if you can't afford this, you're not really going to be held back. Over on my website, brad.site, I rank the ones that I've reviewed. So if you're looking for an alternative to this, that's a good place to start. All right, let's have a quick project update. I think I have the 3D reference model that I'm going to be using. I think it's in a good place, and I'm not used to using Blender on a tablet. Usually I'm just rocking a mouse. And I think the main reason I'm able to pull this off is because this stylus has 3 buttons. And Blender just works so much better if you have a 3-button mouse. Now that I've found the angle that I want to use, it's time to start using this pen in Photoshop and sketch out my scene over it. This thing is super heavy, coming in just under 16 pounds. There were these cardboard handles in the box that made getting this out of the box much easier. You probably already noticed, but the bezels along the side are significantly smaller than some of Wacom's older tablets. And holding this over the Cintiq Pro 24, it's pretty much the same size, even with the larger screen. Now there's a lot here on the box, and it includes several ways for you to connect this to your computer. You can use a single USB-C cable or an older USB cable if you also want to use an HDMI cable along with it. There's also a mini DisplayPort to DisplayPort cable if you want to go that route. And of course, everything you need for power, the power brick, the cable. There's these plates along the back that pop off really easily, and inside you're going to see where your cables go. You can pop them back on when you're done, and this assists you with cable management. Now, I didn't get a stand because I'm cheap. Once I got this unboxed and set up, I realized that a lot of the new experience here of this display is probably that stand, and I should have picked one up. Because without the stand, the user experience isn't great. On the old 24-inch Cintiq Pro, even the newer 16-inch Cintiq Pro, there were these feet that fold out, so you could prop it up at, I don't know, like a 15-degree angle. It's a nice drawing angle, nothing fancy. Here, there's nothing. You need a stand. This 27-inch tablet is pretty much unusable without one. Laying it flat is, one, it's not a good drawing angle. You're gonna get a lot of glare on the screen. It's uncomfortable. Also, because of the way it has handles along the back, it doesn't really sit flat. So if you put too much weight along the top, for example, it's gonna pivot and tilt. And with it laying flat, you can't reach around and use those shortcut keys at all. I was able to snag a little cheap stand off an XP Pen tablet that I had lying around. Fortunately, Wacom has moved away from the proprietary mounting slots that it used on the Cintiq Pro 24 to just having a standard VESA mount holes along the back. Okay, I'm spoiled. 27 inches is a huge screen. It's a lot of fun drawing on this. I'm used to using an iPad or one of those 16-inch display tablets. And because of that, I found myself only drawing in like one section of the screen, not using the entire thing. Come on, Colbo, splurge, move that arm. Now, as far as this project goes, the pencil sketches are coming along well, and I'm kind of tired of adding in detail. I'm not sure how much pen and ink detail I'm gonna add in the next step, so I don't think I'm gonna just sketch in every single brick. We'll see how that rolls when we start adding in the line art, so that's what's next. I'm also going to be adding this sketch file and the finished PSD to the resources folder on my Intro to Digital Art course. If you already have it and you want to work along, you can find it there. If you want to learn more about the course, link down below to bradsartschool.com. So this display looks good. And I mentioned before that this is a 4K display. And this is the area where I think Wacom really poured in a lot of effort. Now, I'm not a color accuracy guy, so I just eyeball these things. And so to me, I think it looks really good. Now, putting it next to an OLED display, like the one on my laptop here, it's not going to look as punchy. And that's probably because this has a matte etched glass finish. You really want that on your pen display for drawing control. It feels great to draw on, but anytime you put that matte screen next to a glossy screen, the glossy screen is always going to just look better no matter what the calibration. This is also a 120 hertz display. Now, usually you find those on gaming monitors or phones or tablets, and it's a cool feature here. So yeah, I guess you can game on this. The real question here is, does it improve pen lag? And maybe a little. It's hard to tell. It's just that drawing on Windows or a Mac is always going to be laggier than it is on a tablet, just because the applications you're drawing in are beefier. There's more going on the computer. It's just not optimized for speed in the same way that, say, Procreate on the iPad is. All right, so we are knee-deep in line art here, and I feel like I'm really getting to know this pen. I think a mediocre pen is absolutely fine for sketching, getting an idea out. But once you really need clean lines, that's where you see the pros and cons. And with this illustration, there are a lot of like long, straight ink lines all over the page. I like to use the touch features, which let me pinch and zoom, and of course, rotate the canvas to give me a better angle to draw at. This is where many pens fall apart. When you're drawing slow angled lines, that's where you see mechanical wave, that's where you see jitter, that's where you can tell the difference between a really great pen like this one and maybe a more inexpensive pen. This is where Wacom's pens really kick butt for me. Now, you may have noticed while I was zooming in and out and rotating, in Photoshop it's not nearly as smooth as what you might see on an iPad or an Android tablet. That's probably more of a Photoshop thing than a Wacom thing, but it gets the job done. And the touch features in general do occasionally register a false touch, but it is a huge, huge improvement over the old 24-inch Cintiq that I'm used to. If those false touches do bother you, there is a physical button along the back which allow you to turn off touch controls altogether. Now, one thing to take note of, touch works way better on Windows than it does on a Mac. Unfortunately, zooming and panning just feel kind of janky in most apps on the Mac. You need to move your fingers a lot in order to pan around, or if you're zooming in and out, you might feel like you're pinching and zooming a lot, but it's just gonna zoom in a little. It's weird. It doesn't feel natural and it feels kind of wrong. If you're looking forward to that touchscreen Mac of your dreams, you'll be disappointed. Now, the lines that this pen makes are fantastic. It's exactly what I expect from a Wacom stylus. I have great control over slow lines and fast lines and everything in between. I feel like the pressure is doing exactly what I want it to do when I'm trying to do it, with variable width lines and different pressure levels. Occasionally, I'll notice that it will pick up pressure a little strongly. Maybe I would say like in the middle of the pressure curve, but that's something that you can go into the settings and tighten up later to your liking. I do have one nitpick. In Photoshop, when I just use a normal hard round brush, like a pressure brush, I get some weird shoestringing on the end of lines. I noticed this on the Cintiq Pro 16 that came out last year too. I tested this out on 2 different Windows computers, and I also tested this out on the Mac. Same thing. Now, this didn't show up on every single inking brush in Photoshop, and when I jumped over to Clip Studio, it was fine. But if you're using Photoshop, there are going to be some brushes where you're going to find some weirdness, and I went poking around online and I still wasn't able to find a solution, at least not yet. This is a new pen and it looks different, but for drawing, it doesn't feel any different than the previous Pro Pen 2. In fact, if you grab that old Pro Pen 2, you can draw directly on the Cintiq 27 screen, no problem. Now, Wacom says that the Pro Pen 3 isn't backwards compatible, but should we believe that? I busted out this old Cintiq 16 and look at this! It totally doesn't work. What? I had to try it. What's interesting about this pen is how customizable it is. The standard pen is pretty light and pretty skinny when you pull it out of the box, but inside the pen holder that mounts to the display, they include 2 different size grips. There's a medium grip and a large grip. The large grip feels like a traditional Wacom stylus. They also included some weights. I thought this was a novel idea. You can pop one of these into the bottom of the pen to make your pen just weigh a tiny bit more, especially along the back. There's also different buttons that pop off, so you can get different ones that match the height of the grip you choose. You also get some replacement nibs and some of these really cool felt tip nibs as well if you really want a different feeling stylus. Also worth noting, you do get 3 buttons by default on the stylus now, but you are losing the eraser along the back with this generation. All right, little project update. I have no idea how I'm gonna color this, but we're gonna color it. Wish me luck. I have barely touched on one of the more unique features of this tablet, probably the very first thing I noticed when Wacom unveiled it. I'm talking about the grips along the back. The last Cintiq Pro relied on a shortcut key remote thing, which I grew to love. It had a ton of options, a lot of buttons, and I found a lot of different uses for it. This time around, they have placed 8 shortcut keys along the back of the device along those grippy handles. Now, it did take me a little bit of time to get used to the placement of that and where all those buttons were, because it was different. But once I did get used to it, I was flying along and it was pretty comfortable. There are 4 buttons on each side for a total of 8, but in reality, I only ever touched 4 because my right hand was holding a pen. So if you're really shortcut reliant, you may hear 8, but you're only really practically getting 4. Now, one of the biggest complaints I saw about the old 24-inch Cintiq Pro does return here, and that is fan noise. In my time using this, the screen does stay pretty cool to the touch. There are no hot spots on the screen, which is really nice. It's really comfortable to rest my hand on all day. That's probably because there's an internal fan or a series of fans inside of this thing running pretty much the entire time I was using it. They're not super loud fans. They're not like blowing crazy hard, but the noise is definitely noticeable. If memory serves me right, I think the 24-inch Cintiq Pro got a driver update that let you toggle off the fans in the settings. Currently, there's no settings like that here, at least that I could find, and not yet. Okay, I feel like I need to have a big reveal for this project. So here we are, illustration colored. You know, I really like working like this, the 3D draw over method. That was a good one. If you want to be in a future video, drop some of your challenge ideas down below and you might be featured in a future review. I had a lot of ground to cover in this review, so I feel like I'm missing something, but I have no idea what it is. So I'm just gonna go with this. What do I think of this tablet? I think it's great. I really did like it. And there are some nitpicks I have. Like, for example, there's no feet. You can't set it at an angle. It needs a stand. I would love to know why some of those brushes are shoestringing the way they are in some apps. And the biggest thing is I really wish touch worked better on the Mac. But overall, I just loved drawing on this thing. It was fun. The whole time I filmed this thing, I was reaching around a tripod. It's hard to film a 27-inch screen. My back ended up hurting by the end of the day, but I still enjoyed it, and that's saying something. Clearly, because of the price, it is not for everyone. And if you want to ask, is it worth the price? I can't answer that for you. For me personally, if I didn't do this for a living, the answer would be no. And nowadays, there's so many high quality alternatives out there. You don't need to get a Wacom anymore. If you want to see alternatives to larger pen displays, I'm going to post 2 of them right here on the side. Go check those out. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you in a couple of days.